Hey, what's up guys, I'm your host Niru, and Samsung just dropped the Samsung Galaxy S20 series. And now there was a lot of leaks and a lot of rumors around this phone, so we pretty much knew everything that was about to come out, but there was still a lot of excitement and a lot of hype around this because of just how good the phone seemed from all of the leaks and rumors. Now, since the phone has dropped in this video, I want to cover the 5 reasons why the Samsung Galaxy S20 series will be the best smartphones of 2020. So starting off with number 1, and in my opinion the biggest change to the new smartphones as well as the most needed change to the smartphone has to be the new camera modules. So starting this year, the regular S20 model also has a triple lens setup, which houses a 12 megapixel main shooter, a 12 megapixel wide angle, and a 64 megapixel telephoto lens. So this year the telephoto lens isn't actually a zoom lens like we've seen in previous years. Instead, what they're doing is using digital zoom. But since it is a 64 megapixel camera, the digital zoom has a lot of detail to go off of, so the digital zoom is said to look just as good as the optical zoom. So because of this technology, the camera will allow you to do up to 30 times digital zoom. So even the lowest end Samsung Galaxy S20s have some seriously good camera game going on this year. So the S20 Plus shares the exact same camera lineup, but also has an additional time of flight sensor for better 3D depth mapping, which can do better portrait mode and better augmented reality. So now moving on to the S20 Ultra, it has a main 108 megapixel camera. But now because this is a 108 megapixel camera, its low light performance may not be as good as some of its other competitors like the iPhone or the Google, but Samsung is using pixel binning technology to make sure that the cameras perform reasonably well in low light. Now that moves me along to the telephoto camera, which is only a 48 megapixel camera compared to the 64. Now I'm sure you're wondering why, but the reason why Samsung only used 48 was because that's all they needed. They adopted a periscope lens technology which was used earlier in the Huawei Mate 30 Pro, and essentially what that allows for is an enhanced digital zoom which allows you to do up to 100 times digital zoom on the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra. 100 times. Previously, the most that a phone could do was 50 times. Now, Samsung has literally doubled that number, going 100 times with a phone. Wow. And now the cameras are also getting serious video improvements. And now this year, the S20 Ultra can shoot 8K footage at 24 frames per second. So now with the 108 megapixel camera, although you get slightly worse low light performance, you get 8K video recording. And if you ask me, that's pretty damn impressive, but still quite debatable whether it's worth it or not. So now moving on to the second reason why Samsung is going to be dominating the smartphone market this year, it has to be the new and improved performance. So now Samsung has packed this device with the latest generation Snapdragon 865 processors. So now running the initial Geekbench results, we can see that the S20 has a single core score of about 923 and a multi-core score of about 3267. Now the iPhone 11 Pro Max on the other hand has a single core score of 1330 and a multi-core score of 3483. So now while the iPhone may still be slightly better than the Samsung, the difference that you're going to notice in day-to-day use will be quite minimal. And on top of all this, Samsung has 12 gigabytes of RAM through every device, and the Samsung Galaxy S20 Ultra will come with an option for 16 gigabytes of RAM, which is completely overkill. The S20 Ultra is shaping out to be quite the tank of a phone. So now moving on from the performance to the third reason, it has to be the displays. So now Samsung has always had some of the best displays in their smartphones, and this year all 3 phones will be having a 3200 by 1440p display, which is better than last year's 3040 by 1440p display. So now on top of that, this year's displays are set to be more flat as opposed to the curved screens that we've been seeing since the S7 Edge, and a flat edge-to-edge display is usually seen as being more visually appealing than a curved one, so it's quite a welcome change. So now here I also want to bring up the bezels. The phone practically doesn't have any. Looking at the corners and edges, the bezels are pushed so far in that the phone is practically all screen. And now the camera cutout for the phone is now also a lot smaller than it was on the Note 10, and it's moved to the center, but personally I prefer it in the corners. But seeing how small it is and how high up it is, it really doesn't bother me that much, but the corner I feel is still a bit better. And now the icing on the cake over all of this is that Samsung now supports 120 Hz refresh rates. So Samsung previously only supported 60 Hz and the OnePlus 7T Pros only support about 90 Hz. Now I do understand that you won't be able to use the 120 Hz display with the full 3200 by 1440p resolution. Sacrificing a little bit of sharpness for that 120 Hz smoothness is probably going to be worth it. And Samsung can also quite easily change that in a software update later down the line, so it's not really a very big problem. So now with practically zero bezel, 120Hz display, as well as Samsung's highest quality OLED panels, this phone is literally eye candy. So now the second to last feature is the battery life. So now with Samsung's fancy new display, insane processing power, 120Hz refresh rate, and dope cameras, you'd think that the battery life would be where the phone gets compromised. But Samsung literally went all out on the battery and left nothing on the table, with the S20 starting at a 4000 mAh battery. Now the S20 Plus has a 4500 mAh battery, and the S20 Ultra has a mind-bending 5000 mAh. And just for the record, the S20 Ultra manages to do all this while still being lighter and thinner than the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Now, although all these numbers are insane, with the higher refresh rate, the sharper display, the new cameras, and the new processing powers, the device's battery life probably won't be exceptionally long, but it will still comfortably get you through the day. But what's even better is that Samsung will now support 45 watt warp charging. So you can charge a 4000 mAh battery in just 1 hour. This phone just keeps getting better. And now the fifth and final reason why Samsung is likely to dominate this year is the pricing for the new phone. So now the S20 starts at $1,000. So now by no means is that a cheap price, but when you compare it to the best competition, a 128GB iPhone 11 Pro will cost you $150 more than the S20. And since the S20 is basically better than the iPhone 11 Pro at pretty much everything that a phone can do, the S20 is practically a steal at $1,000. So now the S20 Plus, which is the bigger model, will cost you about $1,200 to begin with, which is only $50 more than the 128GB iPhone 11 Pro. Not the Pro Max, the smaller 11 Pro. And now the S20 Ultra will start at $1,400, which is the same price as a 512GB iPhone 11 Pro Max. So compared to its competition, Samsung isn't really overpricing their devices at all here. And now I know brands like OnePlus will offer phones for slightly cheaper with similar specs, but the iPhones have always been the biggest competitor to Samsung, so that's why I chose to do that comparison. So now after hearing my 5 reasons, the reason why I think the S20 won't be beaten by any of the other smartphones coming out this year is because all of the leaks and rumors surrounding the phones set to come out this year show that the phones really won't be packing as much into their smartphones as Samsung has. And now really the only competitor that has a chance against Samsung right now is OnePlus, because they also tend to overkill their phones, but we're just gonna have to wait and see until OnePlus launches their phone if it's actually better than the S20. But we also have to keep in mind that the Note series is yet to come out in September, and when that happens, the S20s will go down in price, and once it goes down, there is literally no smartphone that has a chance against it. So RIP to all the other smartphones coming out in the year, because Samsung just one-upped every single one of them. Anyway, I hope you all enjoyed the video, but I'd also love to hear your thoughts about the phone, so leave them down in the comment section below. I read all of them, so share whatever thoughts you're having about the phone, about the video, or really anything in general, and I'll respond to that. If you liked what you saw, then please be sure to leave a like below, and of course don't forget to subscribe, because there's going to be more content coming out like this soon. And until next time, have a great life.